Well, I'm delighted, having said I'd come back in a year or so, I'm delighted to be back here again in Tidewave's new home, back with Ellen and Nina. Basically, this is really a catch-up, and I'd really be interested to know what's been happening. I know you've been doing a lot, clearly moving house is one of them, but what's been happening with the company? Because when we last met, you had one prototype, a rather noisy one, and a fairly cramped space in the university's incubator centre. What's been happening?
Yeah.
It's a whole year, so
It started a whole year. Yeah, so first of all, the prototypes and the product doesn't make any noise anymore.
Great.
Yeah, so that's the first one. And with the moving comes a lot of stuff. So we've been able to hire a few more people, especially on the technical side, which has been awesome, on the software side, side of things. And we have made multiple prototypes. So I think every part of the business have kind of escalated further towards commercializing their product, which is really good. So now we're at the point where we're almost done with the certification process, which we kind of have to do to be able to legally sell the product. So a good step. And we are almost in production now and making the first commercialized product, which we are going to sell, which is really good, and have everything in place to make that happen. So we have the production facilities, and we have the distributors ready almost, and done a lot of market research to see where and how and when and how we're gonna sell the products. I think the biggest difference from when you were here last year ago and now is that we're almost ready for the market. Now it's just right around the corner. So I think 2020 or this year will be a really big year for us, and kind of like the going from the incubator where you just safely test the product and stuff, and actually putting it on the market and asking to get money in return. So that's the kind of like the huge, now our
biggest difference.
Yes.
And also, meanwhile, in the middle from the prototyping and trying different concepts until now, while we have the concept is closed, the design is locked, and we have all the assembly line just waiting to produce, to press play. We have done a lot of technical testing, but also a lot of user testing.
Yes. Yeah.
So since then, we have had a user study lasting 1 year, where we have tested on nursing homes and also people living at home, and also children. So the feedback has been really important for us, just to see that the product is working, because that's important. When we're selling, we have to be sure that the product will work the way it should, that we can actually give the 5 years guarantee that is expected. So to see what kind of things will break during the 1 year has been really important, so that we have reduced our technical risks to the launch, just to not be a failure, because that's one of the biggest mistakes a lot of startups in our branch is actually doing, that they're so obsessed about launching too early, and then 1 year after, maybe you see a lot of products breaking, and so that has been really important, and also reducing the market risk. But seeing what's actually important for the customer. Is it so important to have a touch screen, which is a lot more expensive, and so on, and actually it turned out to not be that, and it's easier to have the certifications in place. So all of the feedback from the patient testing has been essential for us.
And I get the sense that you're becoming in yourselves much more confident about it. It was always a great idea, that was never in dispute, but now you're confident in the product itself.
Yeah, I think we become more and more confident as you get the feedback that confirms that this is something that the market needs and wants. It's not just something that we cooked up in our studies, and it's not just a hobby and a student project. So it's really good to get the confirmation as you go when it comes to different testing on different user groups, for example. And when we last now tested at a nursing home with a man who had a very severe pressure ulcer, and people are starting to call us and ask if they can borrow the product and are actually willing to pay for it because the need is so big. And that gives us a good confirmation that, okay, it's not something that we have to push on people now. We've spread the word for a few years, and now they're actually coming back and we get a better proof of concept and market proof. So I think as you get familiar with the market and the market gets familiar with you, you get more and more of the good feedback. And if we had gotten more of the bad feedback than the good, then I think that we maybe wouldn't be here. Then it would just be,
we would have to adjust or something. So we have always known that there is actually a need for a solution to turn people to relieve the pressure that now is done manually, which cannot be done in the future because we're lacking resources already, and it will be even worse. So we knew that the problem was there, but it's not until we have had all of these tests that we can be really confident in the fact that our product is actually solving the issue. We have seen that we have actually been able to reduce a pressure sore. We have seen that patients are getting better, they're sleeping better, and thereof they are being more active during daytime. And we see that the nursing is really adopting it and say that they are willing to buy, and we can see that our product is actually doing what we are claiming. So that's really important.
So this sort of growing confidence isn't built on nothing. It's the fact you've done lots and lots of testing, both market and technical, and pivoting, adjusting. If I were to ask you to look forward, though, now you're beginning to need to be a little more strategic because you've got the product and it works and they've got the user response. So hopefully all things going well with the certification you launch. What happens next? Because now you're in the business of growing a business. Any thoughts in the future directions?
It's a different phase, and it's a different way of thinking. So I think we've gotten a small taste of it now when we are having important conversations with the distributors and who's going to do what and what will be our role in the future. Will we be a part of the sales team, and will they have in the contract that they will do all of that? We can't do any sales. So we've kind of had to go back and think, who are we as a company and who do we want to be? Are we just developers? Because what happens to me and Nina if this is just developing? Because we are not the product developers in that sense that we are actually making it. So what happens to us? I think we've had a lot of discussions when it comes to actually taking a stand of who we are and who we are going to be in the future. So I think now as a company we're starting to form an opinion on who and what we want to be, and we want to not be we want to be able to help selling the product while also going back and developing the company and maybe making new products, but also being the ones that are leading the internationalization and actually selling the products in other countries, because now we have distributors who are focusing in Norway and we will focus outwards. So we now have a new mission of not just getting in on the market but getting in new markets.
Great.
So that's conversations and conclusions that have come while the subjects has been in the air. We have had to take stands on the different topics. So it's because we have never done this before, and this is a company that has never done this before.
Sure.
And we had to kind of make our own road, which is something that we have to do. No one is going to decide this for us, but we get help from different factors out in the market. For example, the distributors are saying, we want to sell it, we want to be the ones who are selling it all over the world, and then we're like, no, that doesn't fit with our mission. Okay, so now we know that. Okay, now we can. So it's been kind of like a
interesting.
You kind of just have to walk and see and kind of make a stand as you go. And some of the values we have in us, and some we have to kind of learn. And it's a big.
You learn while you go, and
mess.
we have to think ahead. So already now we're thinking what kind of company we want to be.
Yep.
So that's something that is similar with all of the processes with the product. But what kind of product do we want to have in 10 years, and what will be on our road? Because we know that we would like to be a development company, and in some years maybe we have also other products, a portfolio of products that is relevant for people with disabilities, moving disabilities, because in the process we have been really learning about the whole problem, what other kind of related problems do you have when you cannot move yourself. So we have some thoughts in here on that, but also the distribution model and how we want to launch in the different regions.
We have Tatiana here as well, the other voice you might hear in the background. Tatiana, my colleague and professor, and indeed, perhaps I could say godmother, since she taught you originally. Tatiana, you wanted to ask a question.
Yes, I think this discussion is very interesting because what is kind of your exit strategy? I think I asked you this question many years ago in the very start, but still I think that you are thinking about developing this company. So what will happen if anyone comes and say, I pay you hundreds of millions crowns and I would like to buy your company? Would you do that and establish a new one, or would you say no, you would like to grow this because that's what you want to do?
It's very interesting because the exit strategy is always like one of the last points in a business plan. So from an academic point of view, that's the point you have to have in your plan, and it's a huge question. It's a really hard question because you can't really say no, we're never going to sell the company, or we're going to work here until we're 75 years old and are going to retire, because you never know, and something can happen that is out of your control. But since we had to kind of take a stand both in the business plan in Tatiana's class, but also in general to the investors, and you kind of have to have a strategy on it. So what we have said is that we want to continue building the company. We're not building a company to sell it, but there's always a factor that where in some cases it could be really favorable if a bigger partner comes in and we see that this is growing big, and maybe we want to take other roles, and it's nice to have maybe a bigger company come in and take some of the control, so that it will be the best for the company. So we have said that we're going to do what's best for the company. If it's us controlling it, then that's good. It's the best that we control it now because we know it and it's so small and we started it. But if there's a partner that we see that, for example, a developer of similar type of products that have resources to expand to, for example, Japan into Asia, or then that is always a possibility. We've seen some companies that get in partners that own 40% or something, that they have a lot of control, but they don't actually own the company, which have been really favorable. But I think we are also wanting to see the company grow and to be something bigger and actually be a part of it. And I know I would be really sad to see the company grow and me being somewhere else in a random... So I think we want to see the company grow, but not stay here just because we want to. It has to be the best for the company. So it's a very complex, and it's a huge question that I think you have to have a stand on, and also know that it can change.
Yeah.
But we have to at least have the same impression of
Yeah.
our
Yeah, so
strategy
it really
is.
depends on the opportunity, and that's what we see with distributors and producer and all of the collaborators that we have to include to be able to make the product and put it out in the world. So we can see if there is really mutual interests. So if there was a partner that we see that, okay, we will actually benefit, Tidewave will benefit from this opportunity to have ownership, making the company be able to scale. And us, the owners at the moment, could have the same positions and be on the board and have some degree of control. That would maybe be the best. So it depends on what happens in the future. And also the timing as well. Because at the moment the company is still getting shaped the way we would like, but later it might be stable and not so big threat to take in someone else.
I shall ask you those questions another year from now. I wonder if I could just go back a little over the previous year. When we first met, you were very much built on soft money, in the sense of university support, some support from research councils and so on. But what you've been through during this past year is a couple of funding rounds, and you're very different in terms of the financing. Could you just talk us through a little bit about the way your funding model has changed and how that's going to move further in the future, presumably as you get revenue from sales? But can you talk a bit about the funding?
Yeah. What's interesting is that you have to have private funding to get public funding. So it's hard to just survive on the public funding and the soft funding, as you're mentioning, and also the soft funding, as you get kind of familiar with the different opportunities when it comes to funding. You see that soft funding, at least here in Norway, there's a lot of paperwork and a lot of rules and a lot of documentation, and it's nice, but it comes with a little bit of work. But you don't have to sell any of your company, which is really, really good when your company is has a low validation. So we would turn more to where we wanted to have the project with Innovation Norway, and you need to have 55% of your own money or private money coming in to kind of support and get the big package, so that Innovation Norway doesn't take the full risk. And so we had a big round of collecting money from investors after you were here the last time, so in April or something. 2 years we have had. April last year, because now it's January, so it's actually last year, and the year before. So 2 rounds we had, and the first one was actually combined with the Innovation Norway case. So we have had green lights on our project with 3 million grant altogether, and the 3 million had to be matched by investors. So it was a 50-50 share, so we actually had a really good case. So that was the first time. So we said that to investors that, okay, every single dollar or Norwegian krona that you put into the company will be matched by Innovation Norway. So it was a really good deal for them. So that was our first round with 1.5 million Norwegian kroners. And that was our top goal. We didn't want to collect more because we saw that that's actually what we need for year one, to be able to do all of the user testing and to produce some larger scale with their product. And that would really up our valuations until next time. So that has been a really steep learning curve for us to see the timing when the money comes in. Because the first time it was really high risk. We just had a small prototype, which couldn't be used on patients. So that was kind of what we wanted the money for. But just getting out there and talking to a lot of investors, we had a lot of the typical answers.
it's interesting, not now, too
Yeah,
risky, but
yeah.
come back next year.
Mm-hmm.
So the year after, a lot of them saw that, okay, your company is actually doing what you are promising. So they came on board. So the next time we had a much larger investment round with 5 million. And that was also the full amount that we wanted. So
Yeah, because it's the balance. You have the best case. We want the maximum of this, and then
Yeah.
preferably we want this.
Yeah.
And then worst case is this. We need the minimum of this. So it's a very interesting topic and a very interesting balance of getting maybe a little, because everything is always more expensive than you think. So it's nice to get a little more money than you actually need, but you don't want too much money. You don't want 10 million if you can get 5, because then you have a lot of money that you can use and it's safe for a while, but you've sold out the 1/3 of your company for a very, very, very good price.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
now it's interesting when we're having our third round, we'll see how that depends a little bit on the EU funding and some other projects. But to see where our valuation will be, because that's a whole world of itself where, for the existing investors, it should be almost maybe 3 double. That's very good for the investors, but that means that it's a very high validation. So it's interesting to see how we'll, because if we have a private investment round after we launch our product, then we can have a higher validation. So we would like to wait as long as possible this time. So it's,
yeah.
but we rely on private funding more now than previously, and it's a really, when you get up to a higher validation, it's really nice to have the private investors, because they're so, especially if you can choose investors that are very involved and then they have contacts, and some of them are in our boards, and they are market openers and door openers. I think balance out don't get greedy with how much money. If they're saying that they will invest and give you 5 million, then how is it so easy to give up the 5 million? Maybe because we had some investors that were very eager to give us a lot of money, but there's also maybe a backside. And maybe these are not investors that you would like to have on your team, because there are money, but then 10 other demands that they need this and this and this, and they want this and this, and then 5 million is not that much money. So it's that's a whole universe of itself with the investing, and it's really interesting, but it's also it's
really
challenging, because there's a lot of stuff that you have to kind of be aware of, and but
it's really a
more
strategy.
Yeah.
Now before it was just about to have money, so we could, while getting the public funding, it's free money. You don't have to give away shares from your company. But now we have to be more strategic.
Yes.
Because, if you are getting someone's money, you have to give something back. So that's why it has been more strategically nowadays. And also we're not applying for all kind of fundings, because now there are more high-hanging fruits. And it takes a lot more time to make the applications and everything, and with a higher, the higher risk of not getting it. That's been important, but also it's a signal that we send out also with having private investors. The company is more credible, to show that someone is actually putting their own money on your company.
So the investors are like companies or also private persons as well?
Both. So there have been companies that we are collaborating with, both in the certification process and different product partners. One of the software engineers in the company invested, and so he invested from his private fortune or his private money, so it's a small, not much money, and but we like to have the small ones as well. You have to have kind of like a minimum. You can't come with like $100 and